It was and now is a tradition unlike any other. Matt Barrie, Paul Finebaum here in the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. We used to go by this by way of audio, but Paul, we're going to give the people something even better. You and I, Sunday mornings, faces, glasses, voices, all of it, right?
Yeah, I picked this rag up from the Oregon Ducks yesterday. I thought I would wear it well, and it's wearing pretty much like they played poorly.
Man, you know what? That's a great way to start. Let's start there as we recap a fun Saturday of college football. I, God, man, I thought Georgia would need a little bit to plug in some of the new players and reload a little bit. I don't know if that was more Kirby Smart has just got this thing in a dominant spot, or Oregon just wasn't ready.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? And again, I don't mean to be cruel, but I will. I mean, the last time somebody trusted Bo Nix to get it done, lost his job. So good for Dan Lanning. But it just, yeah. I mean, I think people today, Matt, and all week, I think you're going to start to hear them cement around the idea that maybe Georgia is something that we didn't really think they were going to be, and that's not only a contender, but maybe a superpower. They certainly looked like it yesterday, and forget everything that had been said. I mean, you can argue easily they're the best team in the country. How do we know right now? We'll figure it out soon.
Yeah, because I'd asked this to you on Sports Center at some point during the preseason. Like, it's just going to be LSU 2019, where they put on one of the greatest teams ever put on shoulder pads, win the title, and then take a step back, or are all of these top 10 recruiting rankings, top 3 recruiting rankings of the past couple of years that Georgia's been a part, are those finally going to manifest themselves onto the field after all those NFL guys are gone? I think it's part 2. The recruiting now is starting to show at Georgia.
Yeah, and this has been going on a long time, but and nobody needs either one of us to educate the public. I mean, Georgia has been there. They played for the title in 2017, and they came. It seemed like every year on selection day, Georgia was either on the cusp or barely missing out. And they finally knocked the door down last year. And again, I remember a year ago today, we all gave the trophy to Alabama. So there is reason to be cautious. Uh, but as you look at their schedule, yeah, I mean, I'm having a hard time finding a game that I would seriously be concerned about them. And even with what Florida did on Saturday night, that's a long way down the road.
Yeah, because that's really they during at some point yesterday during the broadcast, they had put up the teams that Georgia doesn't play this year.
Oh,
That's it, Paul. That's as favorable of an SEC schedule that you're going to see and or get.
yeah, and I have maybe the rankings came out while I was walking around my neighborhood a minute ago, but Alabama and A&M are top 5, top 6 teams, and Georgia doesn't play either one of them in the regular season. So I mean, that's a pretty good break. I mean, I mean, you can miss Ohio State in the Big Ten, or maybe you can miss somebody in the Pac-12, or you can't miss anybody in the Big 12 anymore. But the idea of not having to play A&M or Alabama is pretty significant.
You brought up Florida. We'll segue there as we do our Sunday morning recap of the SEC with Paul Finebaum. Billy Napier comes in, has to come in and revitalize what had gone a little dormant under Dan Mullen at Florida. We obviously know you can win national championships at Florida. He inherits the quarterback in Anthony Richardson. He's an offensive guy. A lot of people are saying, Paul, this was going to be an upset if they beat Utah. I had Florida winning this game from minute 1 because I just thought it was a tough spot for Utah to be in, and good for Billy Napier, the way that he won that at home in his season opener.
Yeah, and when I was with you the other day on Sports Center, I was struggling because I knew you were going to ask me for the winner in that game, and I was hoping you wouldn't. And without having really given it a lot of thought, went ahead and picked Florida because it just seems so predictable. And I know this is a whitewash of the Pac-12, but it's easy now to say that. And
Yeah.
how can you have a lot of faith in them in these opening season games? And I agree with some of our friends. Utah is probably not out of it yet, but I remember Oregon was not out of it either a couple of years ago when they lost to Bo Nix and Auburn, and they ended up being out of it later on. So it's they look good enough, and that the ending of the game will give them some credibility if they run the table. and they do look like a really good team. But the Gators on a magical night figured it out, and what that gives Florida though is momentum, and they need it because they play Kentucky this weekend. And Matt, this is not the Kentucky team we're going to see against Georgia in November. This is a
Right.
Kentucky team missing some key parts, and they could be vulnerable.
Yeah, and look, Dan Mullen started off and had, if you look at the East titles and competing in New Year's Six games, he did what he needed. He just didn't recruit. And so
No.
we've seen coaches come in before as the savior, but I believe that the Billy Napier hire was one of, he's relentless on the recruiting trail. They knew he had a quarterback coming back in Anthony Richardson. Emory's off at Arizona State. Florida is one of those teams, they're not going to be quiet for long. And for the health of the SEC East, you need Florida, you need Tennessee, and you need Georgia.
Yeah, and I think a lot of places right now, Kentucky being one, Tennessee being the other, and even South Carolina, three schools that seem like they're on the rise. They're now going, ooh, I thought that Florida game looked a little bit easier because, yeah, what happened last night is really resonating, especially in the SEC East in terms of calculation of can we do this or can we do that? And Tennessee fans are thinking maybe 9-10 wins. Same for South Carolina. Obviously, Kentucky has been on the cusp. So that game resonated. And just think about had Cam Rice gotten the ball in the end zone last night instead of throwing into double coverage and being intercepted, everything would be different today in Gainesville. The Florida crowd is as good as there is in college football about turning on their coach without any reason to. And you can ask Dan Mullen next time you see him in the hallway about that. And Billy Napier had a rough offseason, Matt, in spite of everything you said, which is accurate. There were a lot of criticism of his recruiting.
Yeah.
Now that he has the $85 million facility open, that should help. And a couple of wins like this weekend, maybe against Kentucky, and that changes everything in a place like that.
You mentioned Spencer Rattler in South Carolina. I mean, Beamer ball was in full effect against Georgia. 2 block punts for touchdowns. Spencer had some good and had some bad. I want to go all in on this and say maybe a tipping point for the Shane Beamer era. Where do you land after what happened on Saturday?
I don't need to say what's already been said. Check back with me in a week because they have a game against Arkansas on the road, and then Georgia at home. So Matt, we could be looking at a 1-2 team without even breaking a sweat. I don't see them beating Arkansas, and I don't see them beating Georgia. So that's likely what we are going to be looking at. And then can you keep pushing the brakes and the accelerator? You lived in Columbia. You know how quickly things get away from themselves there, and then how they can turn back. So nobody's going to take the enthusiasm away from Shane Beamer. He's got it. The students love him, but ultimately you have to break through, and very few South Carolina coaches have ever done that.
And we talk about this all the time as it relates to Nick Saban with some of the, LSU is a good example of it. Maybe Texas A&M is going to be an example of it, where you have even Georgia to an extent, even though they're in different divisions. You could have a really good team, but you're running into Nick Saban at the height of his powers, like most of the golf world did with Tiger Woods, like most of the NBA did with Michael Jordan. It's just hard to have success when someone is in such a dominant run. And I kind of look at that on a much smaller scale with Beamer and some of these other teams in the SEC East. You might have a good team. You might have a team capable of winning 10 games, but that's not going to be good enough to get to Atlanta, with where it appears Georgia's going to stay along with Saban in the SEC West. You're going to have something magical happen to break through.
Yeah, you do, because I was in Arkansas over the weekend, and those fans are sky high, and why not? But if you can't ever beat Alabama, you're not going to Atlanta. So what do you have? And they unlike Georgia this year, which has a couple of breaks from a scheduling standpoint, and Oregon was their tough non-conference game. Arkansas did well yesterday. They beat Cincinnati. They have a road game at BYU later in the season. The scheduling in this country just baffles me, and I know we don't have time for it, but you think about these ACC schools that have gone on the road and either lost or nearly lost. You think about that game, which was done before Hunter Yurachek, and I think so, instead of putting coaches on the hot seat. Matt, we ought to start putting ADs on the hot seat for stupidity.
Paul, I called the North Carolina game week 0. We were talking about Mac Brown in his office getting ready for that game. They had to go at App State, as everyone knows, yesterday. They go and get through that by the skin of a yard.
Yeah.
And now they have to go to Georgia State this week before a bye week in Notre Dame. What in the hell is North Carolina doing going to Boone and then Georgia State?
Yeah, and you don't have to do it. It's not like you're making money off of these games. I came away from yesterday saying it's probably a good idea that I came away from yesterday thinking the ACC commissioner a year ago and as recently as January voted against a playoff. And I mean, his team. I mean, can you? And he was concerned about the transfer portal and NIL right. and all these ridiculous things. And you got a league right now that you're hanging on for dear life. And I know the quality of programs, and you do as well, about at ODU and at App State, which is why you don't ever go on the road and play them.
You can't. It is a disaster waiting to happen, and we saw an example of it on Friday with ODU and Virginia Tech, and we nearly saw it with, by the way, North Carolina State at East Carolina, and North Carolina at App State. Insane. I'll get you out of here on this one. Is Matt and Paul? We're gonna bring you Sundays of just unfiltered and raw college football content here on the YouTube channel. I'm a big fan of Steve Sarkisian. I'm a big fan of what he's been through in his life to get back to where he is and the patience that he's taken to get there. I do believe that he is going to get Texas to where they need to be and where they ought to be. I'm just worried about next week. How bad is that going to be for Texas when they play Alabama?
You would think so. And again, everyone's there. I mean, just, let's just, is there a pregame show that's not landing in Austin?
Is that where Nation's going? Are you guys headed there?
No, we're not. We don't go to Big 12 sites.
So where are you guys headed? Sorry to digress.
I'm sorry you asked me that. Let me think. Vanderbilt.
Let's go.
Hey, they got Wake Forest, biggest non-conference game in years, and you know Vanderbilt's undefeated. Other than that, I'll leave it to the rest of the guys on the network to promote the event. And Matt, off the air, I'll give you some more particulars. But my point being, they're not. Texas may have joined the SEC, but they're not in there. So you have the Fox show there. You have game day, and the only thing that can stop Alabama from winning by 4 or 5 touchdowns is Nick Saban having a heart, and there's no proof of that he wants to go easy on Sarkisian.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what Kirby did to Dan Lanning on Saturday. Yeah. I can't. Hey, look, Quinn Ewers and Bijan and Sark, they're going to get that national audience, but my God, that thing could get out of hand quick. So that's the marquee game coming up in week 2. This will be your marquee recap of opinions college football fans need and want on the YouTube channel. For Paul Finebaum, I'm Matt Barrie. Paul, appreciate your time. Looking forward to another fun season with you.
Thank you, Matt. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.